Hello, in this tutorial video we're going to be talking about expenses and borrowings as part of the MyWealth portal. So here we are in the dashboard for Daniel and Rebecca, the example clients that we've been using to date. So you can see here in the menu item bar, I can click on that and I will go and have a look at bills. Now in this bills section you also have navigation at the top to go between bills and spending. But we're going to be introducing some new theories that you may not have seen before in regards to essential and discretionary spending. Now, the idea behind that, and this is why we think budgets don't work, but why Money Smarts does work, is we want you to start thinking about money in terms of actual needs versus wants. And that can be exampled in potential examples here around these types of bills and payments. So when it comes to bills, in most cases, they are needs, they're not necessarily wants, but you can also see here that you could have internet and you could have some bonus add-ons, and you might say, well, the basic plan's $30 a month for internet, but we want to have a little bit more speed or whatever, so discretionary might be $20 a month or whatever that looks like. So let's get familiar with some of these categories. So we refer to these as expense items. So these are the expense items down the side here. You can put in a figure here in terms of essential and discretionary, and it will auto calculate that amount. Now I know we're not renters, but by way of example, if we've got $200 a week in rent for us, we can then simply change that to weekly, and that'll make the adjustments. If obviously I put another $20 in here, and you can't really have discretionary rent, but you can see what's going on in terms of those auto calculate fields. So I'll take those out, but that's just the example in terms of what we're looking at here. Now, the other final thing that you want to be looking at is in regards to the types of categories. So in Money Smarts, and I know we're not doing the Money Smarts tutorial right now, but I do want to introduce you to, is you can choose how you want that money to be allocated inside your Money Smarts section. So we've got primary account, credit card, living and lifestyle, and also provision for. So in this particular case, there is no real category. I'm going to leave that as living and lifestyle, but because there's no value in there, it won't change. So just work through those. And again, we've got a simple navigation tip. If you want to add more expenses, you name the bill. So test bill, let's call it test bill. And inside here, I can also then put my amounts, $50. That's going to be weekly, and then I can categorize that into primary direct, and obviously I can hit save if I want to save that. So I can continue to keep adding more and more bills if I want to, and then also delete them if they no longer are required. Down here again, our platform is designed for our professional clients who are using this and also our advisors. So you can disregard these tax liabilities around frequency of income protection trauma, but it's part of the defence that we teach and educate our people on. And then you've also got the ability, if you've added investment properties, you'll start to see some of those bills coming up in here. And then we've got a nice little summary section in terms of what your annual bills are as well. So if you've added an investment property over in the assets section, that information will populate over here. So that is the bill section. I'm going to click over to the spending. I'm not going to save in this particular case. And the same sort of thing applies. So we can see here groceries and non-alcoholic beverages. So in a sense, I'm saying that's monthly, but maybe $750 of that $800 is actually essential, and $50 per month can actually be discretionary. So I'll leave that there. And again, you've got the categorizations. Now you will notice that some of those categories were preset. So we do have for Money Smarts a default setup for that, and I'll talk to you more about that in the Money Smarts tutorial. So again, really simple to operate. If you want to add new expenses, you can put the bill details in there and away you go. And then the annual expenses are then summarized at the bottom there. And that is effectively the expense section of the portal. If we go across to the borrowing section, we can then start to see some of the loans. So this is everything from home loans to personal loans to credit cards. And again, it's laid out in a format that can be squeezed down into a mobile version. So you can start to see what type of loan it is. It's all conditional logic as well in terms of buying real estate. What is the purpose of the funds? You don't need to put all that information in if you're just a beginner, but it is available there to you to have a store or a record of all your financial information, which is the vision that we have for our platform going forward in terms of what is the MyWealth portal. You can see here that if there is an account number linked to it, such as the offset account, that's also put in there. So we're starting to gather information in terms of who the loan was for, what property did that loan relate to, what interest rates, what expiry, what limits, and so forth. So very, very simple in terms of filling the gaps. And you can see for the mandatory fields for our actual professional clients, they would be putting that information in, so we get a good assessment of that. Any other savings accounts that's linked to that, any other different information that would be helpful for us as advisors goes in there as well for our professional users. Loan types, there's another investment loan that we're talking about in there as an example. Loan borrowed amount, so this is releasing equity to potentially buy an investment property against that original security, all comfortable in there. Then you can see here, so this is the section that we were talking about in terms of what types of loans are available. So we have the full list of different types of loan products, so you can see what is the purpose of that. You can also start to see an idea of, in some cases the credit card could be for business. So we would advise you not to put the business card in there if the business is paying for it, because this is the personal household information, but some people blend business and pleasure together. So that's also documented in there. The interest rate on the credit card, any other liabilities, if there's a second credit card, then there's a car loan. You get the picture. Now, if you want to add another loan, you can see here again, we start off with what other loan type it is, and depending on what we put in there, the information will then pre-populate in regards to what that looks like. So it's all very, very easy to follow in terms of how we put that information in. And so that will give you an idea of what's possible and what's not possible. So there you go. And then you've got any of the historical closed liabilities not relevant to you for now, but it's also, you can see historical information in terms of what loans you did have and you didn't have. And that wraps up the expenditure, so the sort of money out. We had the money in and the asset side in the previous tutorial. In this tutorial, we're talking about the money out, and all of that information will then start appearing in your dashboard in terms of that money coming out, those monthly expenditures, and all of that information summarised here before we go into the next section. So there you have it. You come back in over here and you can see it back on the dashboard. You can then start to see all of those expenses line up and that information being caught on your dashboard. And that's the tutorial video on expenses and borrowings and loans. Until the next tutorial, bye for now.